Human bodyguard bleeds for alien diplomat, and she breaks protocol for him. Beginning the assignment. The first time Commander Jalen Kor saw the Zathari diplomat, he understood why the Terran coalition assigned him as her personal bodyguard. Ambassador Cyril was unlike anything he'd encountered in his years of service. Her people, the Zathari, were a crystalline species, tall, live, with luminous skin that refracted light into a halo of colors. Every movement she made shimmered with fluid grace, as though light itself obeyed her. To most humans, she was intimidating, even unsettling. To Jalen, she was a high-value target in a galaxy filled with factions who would rather see the fragile peace between their species shattered. His job was simple: guard her with his life. The summit on Archeon Prime would bring together over 40 species, each with a century of grievances, wars, and bloodshed between them. The coalition believed the Zathari might hold the key to binding them in fragile cooperation if Cyril survived long enough to make her case. Jalen adjusted the magnetic holster on his hip, keeping his pulse pistol within reach. He kept a 2-meter distance from her as they walked through the glimmering hallways of the summit tower, scanning the crowd with the instinctive paranoia of a soldier who had lived through too many ambushes. "Your mind runs faster than your feet," Cyril said without turning. Her voice was like notes plucked from crystal strings, musical yet edged with something sharp. "Habit," Jalen muttered. "My job's to spot trouble before it starts." Her luminous eyes slid briefly toward him. "And when trouble finds us despite your vigilance?" He rested a hand on the pistol. "Then I bleed before you do." Cyril studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable in the shimmer of her alien features. "Humans and your fascination with sacrifice." Curious. Middle. Blood in the halls. The first attempt came on the second night of the summit. Jalen sensed it seconds before it happened, the subtle shift of the crowd, the way conversations hushed, and a figure that moved too deliberately among the delegates. He shoved Cyril aside just as the assassin's weapon discharged, a jagged plasma bolt screaming past her head. The bolt caught Jalen's shoulder instead. His armor absorbed most of it, but pain flared white-hot as the impact burned through flesh. He hit the floor hard, his pistol snapping up. One clean shot, center mass. The assassin crumpled before the guards even reached them. Cyril turned sharply, her luminous hands reaching down toward him. "You're injured." "Just a scratch," he grunted, forcing himself to his feet though blood was dripping freely now. "Stay behind me." But Cyril did not obey. She touched his wound, her crystalline fingers glowing as if light itself flowed from her body into him. The bleeding slowed, the searing agony dimming into a manageable throb. Jalen stiffened. What are you doing?" Her tone was quiet, almost defiant. "Breaking protocol." Healing gestures were not for humans. The Zathari had rules, strict ones, that forbade the sharing of their bioluminescent energy with other species. To them, it was intimate, sacred, reserved for kin or bonded pairs. And yet here she was, pouring it into him. When the guards pulled the assassin's corpse away, Jalen realized what she had risked, not just her career, but exile from her own people. All to keep him standing. That night, when he should have been in the medbay, Jalen sat guard outside her quarters, shoulder-bound but strength strangely renewed. He kept replaying her words in his mind. Breaking protocol. For him. The second attempt. The summit dragged on, tension mounting with each failed negotiation. Whispers of sabotage circulated the halls, someone wanted peace to fail, and Cyril was their main target. Jalen tightened security, but the second attempt was far more sophisticated. It happened during Cyril's speech before the full assembly. She stood on the central dais, light refracting from her body as she spoke of unity, of how differences could be bridges rather than walls. Delegates leaned forward, captivated despite themselves. And then, hidden in the shadows above, a microdrone swooped down, its needle-thin injector aimed at her neck. Jalen didn't think he moved. Sprinting across the chamber, he leapt onto the dais, shoving Cyril aside just as the drone buried its injector into him instead. Agony ripped through his veins. His knees buckled, but he raised his pistol anyway, firing 3 precise bursts. The drone exploded in a burst of sparks, falling in pieces around them. Jalen collapsed, his body racked with convulsions. Whatever toxin it carried was meant to kill in seconds. "Jalen." Cyril's voice cut through the roaring in his ears. She dropped beside him, her hands glowing furiously as she poured light into him. Delegates gasped, guards surged forward, but she ignored them. Her luminous energy battled the toxin in his blood, burning it out, searing his nerves with a painful brilliance that nearly blinded him. He felt his heart steady, his lungs draw breath again. Slowly, the convulsions subsided. He opened his eyes to see her face inches from his, her luminous gaze fierce with something he hadn't seen before: fear. Not for herself, but for him. "You foolish human," she whispered. "You would die for me." His lips cracked in a faint smile. "Told you, that's the job." But as her light faded, he realized what she had done again. Before the eyes of 40 species, she had broken protocol, again, this time undeniably binding her fate to his. Breaking point. The days after the second attempt were strained. Whispers filled the halls that the Zathari ambassador had compromised herself, that a human had tainted her purity. Jalen could feel the tension every time they entered a chamber. But Cyril never flinched. If anything, she stood taller, her presence sharper, as though daring anyone to question her choices. Late one night, in her private quarters, Jalen confronted her. "You shouldn't have done it," he said, voice low. "Twice now. You've put your whole career on the line. Your people will call you impure," she finished for him. Her luminous eyes softened, though her jaw was set with resolve. "They will say I dishonored our traditions, that I bound myself to a human." "Then why?" Jalen demanded. His voice cracked. "Why risk everything for me?" She stepped closer, her glow brushing his skin like warmth. "Because you bled for me, Jalen. Not once, but twice. Among my people, such sacrifice is not obligation, it is devotion. You gave me your blood, and I returned my light. In our way, that is bond." He swallowed hard. He hadn't expected this, hadn't dared imagine it. "I'm just your bodyguard," he murmured. "No," she said, her crystalline fingers brushing the scar on his shoulder. "You are the one I trust when all others conspire. And perhaps," her voice faltered slightly, then steadied. "Perhaps more." The final attack. The third attempt wasn't subtle. A faction of war-born mercenaries stormed the summit tower on the final night, explosives rigged and weapons blazing. Chaos tore through the halls as guards scrambled to repel them. Jalen dragged Cyril through collapsing corridors, pulse pistols spitting fire at enemies who surged from every shadow. His wounds screamed, but he kept moving, shielding her body with his own again and again. They reached the rooftop landing pads, only to find mercenaries waiting with heavy weapons. Trapped. Jalen shoved Cyril behind him, his pistol low on charge. "Stay down." "No," she snapped, her glow intensifying. "Not this time." Before he could stop her, she stepped forward, her entire body blazing with a brilliance so intense it seared the night. The mercenaries staggered, blinded, their weapons faltering. "Now, Jalen," she cried. With his last burst of strength, Jalen surged forward, firing, tackling, striking with brutal precision. The blinded mercenaries fell one by one until silence reigned. Jalen collapsed to his knees, vision tunneling. He'd taken a dozen wounds, and this time, he knew he wouldn't rise again. Cyril knelt beside him, gathering his bloodied body into her arms. "Stay with me, human." His voice was a rasp. "Looks like I finally did my job right." But she shook her head, her luminous tears falling like shards of starlight. "No, not this way. If I must burn my light to nothing, I will not lose you." She pressed her forehead to his, pouring every ounce of her bioluminescent essence into him. It surged through his veins like fire and ice, knitting torn flesh, mending shattered bone, dragging him back from the abyss. When the glow finally dimmed, Jalen gasped, alive. He looked up at her, stunned. You gave everything." Her glow was faint now, fragile. Yet she smiled. "Then we are bound completely." Ending, after the storm. The summit ended not in failure, but in awe. For 40 species had seen what no treaty could create: sacrifice across bloodlines, devotion across boundaries. The Zathari, though scandalized, could not deny the unity it symbolized. Cyril was recalled, her people demanding explanations. But she refused to renounce him. Before the assembly, she declared, "This human bled for me, and I broke protocol for him. In our bond lies the proof that peace is possible, not in words, but in deeds." The chamber erupted, and history shifted course. Months later, aboard a coalition vessel, Jalen found himself standing at Cyril's side once more, not as her bodyguard, but as her chosen. Their bond was controversial, fragile, and uncertain. But it was real. And for Jalen, who had bled for her, and for Cyril, who had broken every law of her people for him, it was enough. As they looked out at the stars together, her hand brushed his, luminous against scarred flesh. "We are no longer bodyguard and diplomat," she said softly. "We are something greater." And for the first time in years, Jalen allowed himself to believe it.